What is pantograph? Pantograph is a composite graphical record of all events of labor, including maternal and fetal vital parameters. The key feature or central feature of pantograph is the plotting of progress of labor in terms of cervical dilatation and descent of fetal head. So pantograph is a composite graphical representation of all events of labor, the central feature being the descent of head and cervical dilatation in centimeter. In the year 1954, Friedman first depicted this cervicograph. That is, as you all know, labor has two distinct phases, number one latent phase and number two active phase. This is the latent phase of labor, that is, unless the cervical dilatation reaches 3 centimeter, that is called latent phase. After that, it enters into active phase. Previously, it was accepted like that. Active stage of labor starts at 3 centimeter dilatation. Now it is changed. What Friedman did, then at the after latent phase, there is active phase of labor. The first part of active phase is phase of acceleration. Second part is phase of maximum slope. Here the contractions are higher in intensity, duration and magnitude. And then a stage of deceleration. First is stage of acceleration, second is stage of maximum slope, and third is the stage of deceleration. These are the three subdivisions of active phase of labor. Next, first in 1954, Friedman described this characteristic sigmoid pattern of cervicograph. Next important development occurred in the year 1972 when Philpott and Castle, they introduced active line, alert line and active line. What are they? Here if you look at the graph, the cervix in a normal labor, both in multi and primary gravida, the cervix should dilate at least 1 centimeter per hour. So, Philpott and Castle, they introduced alert line. They introduced this alert line where the dilatation of cervix is shown at the rate of 1 centimeter per hour. That is, this is the minimum acceptable rate of progress in a normal labor. Normally, a normal labor should finish before touching this alert line. So, and another line, that is the Axel line, it was drawn 4 hours right and parallel to it. So, between alert line and Axel line, the zone, the gap is 4 hours. Why it is so? Because as I said earlier, that normal labor, any normal labor should be completed before touching the alert line. So this is the zone left to this alert line. This is called green zone. This is the zone between these two lines are yellow zone, and this zone is red zone, right to Axel line. So what happens if the labor does not progress normally, that if it touches the alert line, that means we have to be alert that labor is not progressing satisfactorily. So we will have to take some action, we have to reassess the case, and we have to expedite the process by rupturing the membrane or adding some oxytocin. So this is the importance of alert line. Alert line means we have to be alert about the progress of labor. If it finishes by this yellow zone, that is okay. But if it touches the axle line means something is definitely wrong and you have to take some action according to the position of the labor. That is, if the cervix is fully dilated, we can go for instrumental delivery, and if it is not possible, go for cesarean section. So you see, between alert line and axle line, there is a gap of 4 hours. Why this gap of 4 hours is there? Because if it was not there, if we started axle only on alert line, what happens? Unnecessary cesarean section rate would have been increased, and it is seen that this 4 hours lag does not compromise the fetal and maternal condition. So this is the importance of this axle line. Unless it touches the axle line, we will not take any action for immediate delivery. Okay? So this action and alert line are introduced by Philpott and Castle in the year 1972. Then came composite pantograph. Here the latent phase is fixed, maximum up to 8 hours. Then active phase of labor was considered at 3 centimeter dilatation. Later, modified pantograph, this is mostly used nowadays, 2000. Here there is no latent phase, because latent phase is the complaint, is the symptom said by the patient. Some patients say I am in labor for 24 hours, for 30 hours. So it is subjective, not objective. So it varies from patient to patient. That's why latent phase is removed from pantograph, and active phase is considered at 4 centimeter dilatation, because in many multipara their cervix is 3 centimeter dilated even before the onset of labor. Now the latest one, next generation pantograph, that is labor care guide. Here both the action line and alert line are removed, because labor is not a static process, it is a dynamic process, and it differs from patient to patient. So you cannot dictate that labor should be completed by this hour or by that hour. So in labor care guide, they removed action line and alert line, and the starting point of pantograph was at 5 centimeter of dilatation, and previously the pantograph was only for cervical dilatation. As soon as cervix is fully dilated, that is 10 centimeter dilated, pantograph, there was nothing more to record in pantograph. But here they introduced the monitoring of second stage also in pantograph, and including a different section of intervention to improve overall childbirth experience. What is that different section? Different intervention. This is patients, number 1, attendant. Special attendant is provided with the patient. Number 2, oral fluid intake. Actually, when the patient enters into active phase, we do not give solid food, but liquid, oral liquid is allowed. And number 3, posture. We do not dictate patient that you take this particular posture or this particular posture. Allow the patient to adopt the posture she is comfortable with. And finally, pain relief. If she complains of pain, we provide pain relief procedures so that the childbearing experience become a fruitful one for both the couple. Advantages. What are the advantages of pantograph? Number 1, predictive value. You can predict, after examining a patient, if you maintain pantograph, you can predict the time of delivery. Often patient party asks, sir, by which time she will deliver. So from here you get a predictive value. You can say that it will be finished by such and such hour. So that is the predictive value. Number 2, objective value. As all the parameters are recorded in a single sheet of paper, so it is in a busy labor room, particularly during a handover, you don't have to hand over like this, each and every patient, her findings is this and this, everything is written in paper. Next labor room sister come and he will find everything, what she has got, what is her position, etc. So that is the objective value. Number 3, statistical analysis. The local problems, what are the statistical analysis? This was the finding, ultimately outcome was this. So there is provision for statistical analysis. Number 4 is medico-legal. What is medico-legal importance? Because the outcome of labor became unfavorable, then you will be questioned. So here everything is documented, when you have interfered or what you have done, that is recorded. That will prevent you from medico-legal cases. Number 4, main advantage of pantograph, it reduces prolonged labor and number of unnecessary cesarean sections. And number 5 is reduces both maternal and fetal mortality and morbidity. So these are the advantages of pantograph. Indication of pantograph, কাদের আমরা pantography করব? Number 1, all primary gravida, all high risk pregnancy, and in certain malpresentations and malpositions, occipito-posterior, face presentation, breech presentation, these are the few malpresentations and positions where pantography should be maintained. And finally, the in borderline cephalopelvic disproportion and vaginal delivery after cesarean section, that is called VBAC, VBAC, vaginal birth after cesarean section. So these are the indications of pantography. That is all about pantography. It will be taught further in your SGD classes. Induction of labor. What is induction of labor? Induction of labor is artificial initiation of uterine contraction. Mind, every word is important. Artificial initiation of uterine contraction in a quiescent uterus. Mane quiescent uterus means uterus which is not in active labor. In a quiescent uterus, after the age of viability of the fetus, by means of medical, surgical or combined methods, with the aim of having vaginal delivery. So what is induction of labor? Induction of labor is artificial initiation of uterine contraction in a quiescent uterus after the age of viability of fetus by medical, surgical or combined methods with the intention of having vaginal delivery. Another term is augmentation of labor. Difference between these two is augmentation of labor. In augmentation or acceleration of labor, patient is already in labor. That is, she has started spontaneous labor, but her uterine contractions are inadequate for proper progress and completion of labor. There we are expediting the process, the progress of labor. That is what is called augmentation and acceleration. So difference between the two is, here patient is not in labor, there is no induction of labor, patient is not in labor, we are inducing labor, and in augmentation or acceleration labor, here patient is in labor but our uterine contractions are inadequate. We are augmenting by accelerating the process. That is why it is called augmentation or acceleration of the labor. And number 3, she said, sir, 13th is a auspicious day, please induce on that particular day, or the attending doctor will leave station for 7 days. So she or he induced before leaving the station. These are elective indications. There is no valid indication for when we will come to indication of induction. So elective induction it will be done in term. Sorry. হ্যাঁ বলো। ঠিক আছে। So elective induction should be only differentiating point is that it should be a term. Patient, I will induce at the request of the patient, but not preterm. But induction can be preterm also. Induction of labor, here you see, here it is not mentioned that it should be a term. It is just after the age of viability, after the fetus attains the age of viability. Because in some conditions, we have to go for induction prematurely. Suppose a case of cholestatic jaundice, we have to induce before term. So induction may be preterm or at term, but elective induction should be at term. Now, incidence. In India, incidence is about 10% and USA, it is about 20%. What are the indications? The general principle of indication is if the risks of continuation of pregnancy exceeds the risk of termination of pregnancy, only then we go for induction. If the risk of continuation of pregnancy exceeds the risk of termination, then we go for induction. What are the indications? Number one, maternal indications. Maternal indications, mainly number one, medical disorders in pregnancy like diabetes mellitus, uncontrolled hypertension, renal diseases, systemic lupus erythematosus. These are the medical diseases in pregnancy where we go for induction. Number two, pregnancy related diseases, preeclampsia, APH and as I mentioned earlier, intrahepatic cholestasis. Number three, premature pre-labor rupture of membrane. These are the maternal indications where we go for induction. Fetal indications, what are fetal indications? Post-maturity. Post-maturity, so, and most common complication of induction is prematurity. So, you have to be 100% sure by all available means that you are not inducing prematurely unless otherwise indicated. So, post-maturity, fetal indications, if really the baby is post-mature, as you all know, with post-maturity, the head becomes hardened due to ossification of the sutures and fontanelles. So, molding does not occur, delivery becomes difficult. Post-maturity, IUGR, RH isoimmunization, oligo and polyhydramnios, IUD, fetus with major congenital abnormality and corrected unstable life. So these are the fetal indications: post-maturity, IUGR, RH isoimmunization, oligo polyhydramnios, IUD and fetus with congenital abnormality. Corrected unstable life. What is unstable life? Unstable life, that is lie of the fetus is not stable. We know lie of fetus is either longitudinal lie or transverse lie or oblique lie. Unstable lie means fetus is sometimes in transverse position, sometimes in oblique position, sometimes in longitudinal position. What it happens in multigravida, pendulous abdomen. So what we do in unstable lie, we correct the lie. That is from oblique, we externally change the position doing version. The fetus axis is made longitudinal. Then we go for rupture of membrane. Some amount of liquor is drained, uterus become contracted, so the head become fixed. It will not further be unstable. It is also called stabilizing induction. This is what prolonged labor, maternal. সাফার করবে দুজনেই তো। প্রলং লেবার হচ্ছে তো ম্যাটারনাল কজ, ফিটাল কজও হতে পারে। হ্যাঁ, ওটা পরে আসছে এতে দেখবে। তাহলে দিস ইজ আনস্টেবল লাই। ইন কেসেস অফ আনস্টেবল লাই ইট ইজ কল্ড স্টেবিলাইজিং ইন্ডাকশন। অর্থাৎ উই আর ইন্ডিউসিং টু স্টেবিলাইজ দ্য আনস্টেবল লাই। Contraindications when we will not go for induction. This is again divided into absolute contraindications and relative contraindications. What are the absolute contraindications? Number one, severe degree of contracted pelvis, where vaginal delivery is not possible, we will not go for induction definitely. Certain malpresentations like transverse lie, oblique lie, brow, mento-posterior, these are the conditions that will never, normal labor is not possible in these positions. But certain malpresentations, as I mentioned earlier, that is face presentation, breech presentation, occipito-posterior presentations, that are not contraindicated, that are indicated for induction of labor. But these malpresentations, transverse lie, oblique lie, brow and mento-posterior, these are in these cases, induction is contraindicated. Placenta previa, in pregnancy-related complications of induction, we said APH. APH is another, APH is an indication for induction of labor. APH means both placenta previa and accidental hemorrhage by abruptio placentae. In all cases of abruptio placentae, you can go for induction of labor. But in placenta previa, we usually do not go for induction. Some prefer to go for induction only in type 1 and type 2 anterior. These are the various types of placenta previa, type 1, 2, 3, 4, according to degree of encroachment of lower segment. And if it is type 1 or type 2 anterior, only then we can go for induction. Otherwise, the rest of the types, type 2 posterior, type 3 and 4, we won't go for indication, because this will, placenta is in front of the fetus. This will hinder the entrance of the head in the pelvic cavity, and there is much more chance of bleeding. So these are contraindications. Number 4, history of previous hysterectomy, previous repair of rupture uterus. So these are another contraindications for indication of labor. Cervical CA, cancer cervix. Obviously, we are not going to disturb a cancer cervix. Acute vulvovaginal herpes and cord prolapse. Cord prolapse, immediate delivery is required. We won't go for induction. What are the relative contraindications? Non-assuring fetal status. Orthat, after doing CDG, you noticed that the fetus is in jeopardy already. During labor, due to uterine contraction, some amount of hypoxia occurs. A healthy baby can withstand that hypoxia, but a already compromised fetus cannot withstand. So, non-assuring status, if the fetus is in CTG shows late deceleration, so we won't go for induction. Maternal cardiac disease. Cardiac disease, in cardiac disease, we usually do not go for induction, because normal delivery in cardiac disease usually happens because the baby is smaller in size, due to hypoxia, uterine contraction is stronger, and due to congestion, pelvic tissues become soft. So easy delivery, usually cardiac patients usually go into spontaneous labor. So in cardiac patient, we usually do not go for induction of labor. Cervical fibroid and impacted ovarian cyst, because they will hinder the descent of head. So these are the contraindications. Prognostic indexes. Before going for induction, you will have to assess the patient, whether the induction will be success or failure. How will you judge? How will you assess? So what are the points before going to induction you have to consider? Number 1, parity. Parity of the patient. Parity in the higher order have much more success rate than lower order. That is, if in a primary gravida, chance of successful induction is less in a primary gravida than a second or third gravida. So parity is important. Number 2, proximity to term. Nearer to term you induce, more will be the success rate. You induce a patient at 38 weeks and you induce a patient at 32 weeks. So chance of success is more with 38 weeks or 39, অর্থাৎ as the proximity to term is directly related to the success of induction. Number 3 and most important is Bishop's score. Bishop's score, cervical scoring. Here 5 points are considered: cervical dilatation, cervical effacement, cervical consistency, cervical position, and station of the fetal head. These 5 points are considered and they are numbered, scored. If the score is 6 and above, we call it a favorable cervix and we go for induction. And if score is less than 6, so it is unfavorable cervix. Here we have to take special type of induction. If you have to induce, so we have to take special maneuvers to ripen the cervix. So this is the most important, Bishop's score is the most important indicator of success of induction. Of these 5 points, these 2, that is consistency and position of cervix, are no longer considered important. Only these 3 points in simplified Bishop's score, the dilatation, effacement, and station of the presenting part, these 3 are considered. Finally, and very important is patient's own attitude towards induction. Some patients, they are upset that their labor is not started, so they become upset and their mentality, sir, ye hobe na. Once patient says, sir, hobe na, that will not occur. So patient's mentality towards the induction is very important. If the patient doesn't want induction and you say, I am going to induce, chances of failure is much more. Now coming to the methods of induction. What are the methods of induction available? Number 1, traditional previously done OBE. OBE is oil bath enema. Patient was given castor oil, so with the expectation that irritable bowel movement will reflexively initiate uterine contraction. So oil bath enema. Then nipple stimulation. Nipple stimulation induces oxytocin secretion. So nipple stimulation may induce labor, acupuncture, herbal products, and sexual intercourse. Sexual intercourse because of presence of prostaglandin in seminal fluid. Prostaglandin is the most important factor in initiation of labor. Actually, prostaglandins are named so because von Euler, who discovered prostaglandin, he first isolated in seminal fluid, and he thought that this chemical is coming from prostate gland. That's why these are called prostaglandins. Therefrom the name came prostaglandins, because it was first isolated from seminal fluid. So other methods are medical methods, surgical methods, and combined methods. So what are the medical methods? Number 1, prostaglandins. Prostaglandins, how could you use? Intravaginally, intracervically, orally, sublingually, rectally. It can be given in every route. What are the common preparations we use? PGE2. You all know PGE1, PGE2, PGF2 alpha. PGF2 alpha is usually not used in induction of labor, it is used in PPH. So PGE2, dinoprostone gel, it is given intracervically. It ripens the cervix and also initiates onset of labor. It could be repeated at the interval of 4 to 6 hours and could be given 3 to 4 times. Number 2, PG misoprostol tablet, 25 to 50 microgram are usually given vaginally. Oxytocin drip, you all know, most commonly used, is at lower regimen of 2 milliunit per minute, and another is 6 milliunit per minute. It is asked in examination, how will you prepare this milliunit per minute, how will you calculate? Oxytocin is available in 2 ampoules, 2 unit 2 ml or 5 ml in 1 ml, 5 unit in 1 ml. How will you prepare it? In a 500 ml bottle, if you give 1 unit, it became 2 unit in 1000 ml, is 1 liter. that means 1 milliunit in 1 liter. So 1 milliunit 1 liter, 1 unit, oh sorry, it became, if you give 1 unit in 500 ml, so it became 2 unit in 1000 milliliter. That means 2 milliunit in 1 milliliter. 2 milliunit in 1 milliliter. 1 milliliter is equal to 15 to 16 drops. So if I give oxytocin drip at the rate of 15 to 16 drops, so she will get 2 milliunit per minute. This calculation is asked in examination. How will you prepare this? Usually we start with 2 milliunit per milliliter and it is increased every 30 minutes, and then maximum effective dose is reached 40 to 50 milliunit. That means if in contraction does not start with this concentration, we abandon the procedure. 1 লিটারে 2 ইউনিট হলো, 2 ইউনিট ইন 1000 ml, তাহলে 1 ml এ 2 মিলি ইউনিট হচ্ছে না? তাহলে 1 ml এ যদি 2 মিলি ইউনিট হয়, 1 ml equals to 15 drops, 16 drops. So if you infuse at the rate of 16 drops per minute, তাহলে 2 মিলি ইউনিট per minute হচ্ছে না? 1 ml এ এই ছেলেটা বুঝছে না, 2 মিলি ইউনিট ইন 1 ml হচ্ছে, তো আমি তো 1 ml ই দিচ্ছি, 16 ড্রপ পার মিনিট যদি দিই তাহলে তো 1 ml ই যাচ্ছে, তো সেই 1 ml মানে কত, 2 মিলি ইউনিট তো হচ্ছে, 4 হবে কি করে? এবার বাড়াবো যখন 2 মিলিলিটার, তখন আমি 15টাকে 30 করে দিলে ওটা 4 মিলি ইউনিট হয়ে যাবে। ওইভাবে বাড়াতে হবে। ড্রপ প্রিপারেশনটা তো রেডি হয়ে রইলো, এবার আমি বাই ইনক্রিজিং অর ডিক্রিজিং দ্য রেট অফ ইনফিউশন আমি মিলি ইউনিট বাড়বে কম বেশি ভাবে হবে। বোঝা গেছে? সার্জিক্যাল মেথড, তাহলে মেডিকেল মেথডের মধ্যে গেল প্রোস্টাগ্ল্যান্ডিনস, জেলস, ট্যাবলেট, and surgical method হচ্ছে membrane stripping. We strip the membrane, we introduce one finger in the right cervix and rotate the finger inside the cervix circularly 360 degree. Membrane is stripped off from the lower segment and they are prostaglandins produced locally and onset of labor starts. So membrane stripping number 1. Number 2, amniotomy, that is artificial ARM, artificial rupture of membrane. It may be low and high. High is not done today, but high was done previously in polyhydramnios cases. And combined method, usually combined method is done. We induce labor, when the membrane bulges we go for amniotomy. So these are the 3 methods commonly practiced medical methods with either oxytocin or Sabipri or prostaglandin, and surgical method amniotomy and combined method. Certain non-favorable method not practiced nowadays, lamelluria tent, if you introduce a Foley's catheter inside the cervical cavity, patient will start labor within 24 to 48 hours. And newer research agents, some agents have been discovered recently. Nitric oxide donors, mifepristone. Mifepristone is anti-progesterone. So and relaxin hormone, which relaxes the pelvic joints, it induces labor. So these are the uncommon methods of induction. Then what are the hazards of induction? Hazards of induction are failed induction, prolonged labor, cord prolapse, abruptio placentae, increased operative delivery. Failure, because when you are inducing, particularly by surgical method, you are time bound. You cannot indefinitely leave the patient in labor. So if she does not deliver within a particular time, you will have to go for instrumental delivery. So rate of increased operative delivery rate is increased. Need of analgesics, more analgesics are needed. Morbidity increased, hyponatremia, uterine hyperstimulation, and finally the psychological upset of the patient. These are the hazards of induction. What are the fetal hazards? Prematurity. So that's why I was saying that you have to be sure when you are inducing, you have to be sure that the fetus is mature, because this is the iatrogenic complication. If you cannot diagnose prematurity and induce, ultimately you will bring out a premature child. So prematurity is the most important complication. Number 2, fetal hypoxia, increased morbidity due to excessive uterine contraction, uterine tachysystole, and trauma of operative delivery. And in prolonged prolonged induction with oxytocin, it is seen that baby may develop hyperbilirubinemia 24 hours after delivery. Active management of third stage of labor. It is very important. What is active management of third stage of labor? These are a set of interventions undertaken to cut short the third stage for preventing PPH. How? By expediting the process of expulsion, process of separation and expulsion of placenta. So what is the definition of AMTSL? A set of interventions undertaken after the birth of the baby. Baby is delivered but placenta is not delivered. হ্যাঁ বলো, হ্যালো, হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে। তাহলে set of interventions undertaken after the birth of the baby to expedite the process of separation and delivery of the placenta to prevent PPH. So previously what we did is expectant management. Expectant management of third stage, after delivery of the baby, we used to wait for spontaneous separation and expulsion of the baby or expulsion of the placenta. But it is seen the third stage is very important, because PPH is the dreadest complications of labor. So most of the patients die of PPH if we manage third stage expectedly. So here came the idea of active management of third stage of labor. What we do actually? How it differs from expected management? In expected management, we wait, placenta separated, signs of placental separations are seen, we take out the placenta, then we used to give oxytocin. Here we do not wait for the signs of separation of placenta. Just after delivery of the baby, we give oxytocin. That may be in the form of oxytocin. Oxytocin is most commonly used because it is easily available, it is cheap, and its only disadvantage is to preserve oxytocin, you have to maintain the cold chain. If you keep oxytocin outside fridge, its efficacy is reduced to 30%. This is the only difficulty with oxytocin. Oxytocin, it should be kept in fridge up to always. A cold chain break, if there is break in the cold chain, its effectivity is lost. So oxytocin 10 units, either give it IM or slowly IV. Then come methyl argometrin, methargine, commonly used when we were students, but it is avoided in hypertensive disorders of pregnancy, cardiac disease, Rh negative mothers. Here argometrin is not used. Number 3, injection symptometrin. Symptometrin is combination of syntocinon and methargine, that is argometrin. Its advantage is, in a labor room, if the sister is the only attending person, she is delivering, for her to give IV injection is very difficult, and if you give IM injection, the onset of action of methargine takes almost 7 minutes after IM injection. So that is a good amount of time. In PPH it is said that count time in seconds, not in minutes. So it is very important. What happens? Symptometrin, if you give IM, onset of action of syntocinon is very fast than methargine. So first oxytocin will initiate contraction, then methargine will continue it. So IM symptometrin is another option. Finally now came carbetocin. Carbetocin has the advantage over oxytocin that it is heat stable. You can keep it in room temperature, but only drawback is it is very costly. One ampoule costs nearly 400 rupees. Misoprostol, as I said earlier, Misoprostol could be used in induction of labor, in prevention of PPH. It could be given orally, sublingually, rectally. Then what happens after giving oxytocin? Active management first is use of oxytocin. Next is delivery of the placenta by controlled contraction. That is what is called Brandt-Andrews controlled contraction. So here we do not wait for all the signs of placental separation. As we see the uterus becomes globular and hard, we give controlled traction on the cord and placenta is delivered. Number 3, delayed cord clamping. Nowadays, delayed cord clamping is practiced because if you delay in clamping the cord, about 80 to 100 ml of blood goes to fetus. Early cord clamping denies the baby of 80 to 100 ml of blood. And intermittent assessment of tone. That is when we are doing AMTSL, we are feeling the uterine tone. As soon as the uterus become hard and globular, we go for controlled contraction. Okay? So these are the components of active management of labor. What are its benefits and drawbacks? Why we go for AMTSL? Number 1, it reduces blood loss by 80%. In expected management, there was a good amount of blood loss. So active management reduces blood loss and prevents PPH, because PPH is the major cause of maternal death. Number 2, it cuts off the third stage of labor. Normal third stage, when we discussed about the stages of labor, normal third stage is up to 30 minutes, half hour, both in multi and primary. But here it comes down to 5 minutes. What are the drawbacks? Number 1 drawback, there is a theoretical risk of retention of placenta, because we are giving oxytocin before separation of placenta. So if there is contraction of uterus, that may produce retained placenta. But this is a theoretical risk, it usually does not happen. And number 2 and most important, that before giving oxytocin, you have to be sure that multiple pregnancy, that is twin, is not there. First baby is delivered and you give oxytocin, second baby is inside. So these two are drawbacks. So before giving oxytocin, you have to be sure that second twin is not there.